That is so California.
Recording in progress. What's that?
It's just so California and defer to Kansas City is back east.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to share screen, and we're going to start off with, okay, where is slideshow? Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Oh, that's your computer. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Erase that. All right. So, by gosh and by golly, I'm just going to start right now with today's Wall Street Journal. They're making progress. They just took control of a key river bank. This is an interesting website if you want a daily map. I generally try not to do daily stuff anymore. I'm kind of at the most a weekly guy, but when I get into a historical moment like this, I can't resist. So there's growing discontent within Russia. So this guy, when we did our original history of the Ukraine, we spent a lot of time on Chechnya, and that was Putin's first big success in 1997. He crushed Chechnya, and he crushed them so far, but at the end he made a deal with their main warlord, this guy's father, Kadyrov. And ever since, this guy has been the guy in charge of Chechnya and keeping it quiet, and that's why the Chechen soldiers or mercenaries are appearing in Ukraine, and this guy Kadyrov, though, he's put a lot of his men there. As mercenaries, if you will, and he's fed up, and he even used the word treason in connection with the defense minister, and so there's that, and then there's people closer to political advisors. A former Putin advisor, Markov, he's scoffing at any hope that you're going to change the unity of the West by manipulating energy supplies. Europe's not going to freeze. They're going to just dress more warmly, and he doesn't think that is a strategy. So he's speaking out against Putin's strategy. And then there's this. Which gave us all great schadenfreude, the new Ferris wheel that opened up in Moscow, a gala event the same week that everything's falling apart in the Ukraine. Putin goes to dedicate it, and it breaks down the first day, a metaphor. So this is the big Ferris wheel, and the joke was that if you were in the very tippy top of the Ferris wheel, you could see the Russian troops retreating in the Ukraine. So other people are hitting him pretty hard. So this is a former pro-war television presenter, and he's saying, what's up with the carousels and the clowns and the attractions? Are you sure we should try to distract and entertain at a moment like this? Our army doesn't have any thermal cameras, no body armor, no secure communications, no first aid kits. And you're holding $1 billion ruble festival on a Ferris wheel. What is wrong with you? So pretty strong stuff. Even his right-hand propagandist, admits it was the most difficult week at the front. And who is this guy? This guy is just recently was saying erase UK from the map, hinting at nuclear warfare. So this even the hardliners. But there are a few hardliners. This is a notable one, a woman, Margarita Simonyan, and she urged Putin to attack civilian infrastructure and even mentioned the N-word. At one point, she held so much influence that Forbes magazine rated her above Hillary Clinton on its power list. And she has just weighed in the last couple of days. There's some sign that there's some panicking among the movers and shakers in Russia, and there's immediately saying, "Hey, you better, if you want to hold these referendums, you better hold them now." Sort of tacitly admitting things don't look so good for the future. And this woman, Margarita Simonyan, said, "Good idea. Let's hold those referendums now, and that way we could easily threaten NATO if they encroach on these lands that have had a referendum," which is incoherent because Russian forces aren't controlling the land. So it's going to be kind of hard to say you've had a referendum. And you notice here she refers to Crimea. More about Crimea in just a minute. And then there are the council members. These are politicians who have worked their way up through civil society and are representatives on their local councils. And there's over 70 of them now who have signed a petition. And they've gone on to social media. The petition's been seen by millions. And one council called on Putin to resign. And then there is another group, a council that actually used the word treason. They were hauled in the court, but interestingly, they're still speaking out. Even though they were hauled into court, they're not being intimidated. I think all this is fascinating, and we were all wondering, where is Russian society for 6 months? And here they are. Here they are. The Christian Science Monitor approached this guy, a member of one of the deputies, and he said it was well worth it. They've been speaking out all along, but nobody's been paying attention. But now they think they've reached a lot of isolated individuals who are feeling the same way, to let them know that they're not alone. So we might be seeing the building of a movement, or rebuilding. I'll get to that in just a second. But here's the story of the week. This is a pop diva, Alla Pugacheva. You all can do that better than I can, probably. She has come out against the war. This is big. On her Instagram, which has 3 million followers, she said, "Russian boys are dying for illusory goals. We're now a pariah state, and this has made life a burden for our citizens." And here she is with her husband. You may be fooled. Today she is 73 years old. And her husband is 27 years younger than she is. They took off at the beginning to Israel, and he's a comedian, and so he's been performing in Israel over the last 5 months or so. But they have twins that are now 10 years old. So when she was 61, they had twins with a surrogate mother. This is a very unusual woman, larger than life. This guy, by the way, is her fifth husband. And so diva Alla returned in August because she wants her kids to get back into school. But she also said, as she got off the plane, that she was here to clean up the mess and put things in order in my head and in your head. And so how did she come out against the war? Her husband has been declared a foreign agent for his outspokenness. And so she requested at the beginning of this that she also be named a foreign agent in solidarity with her husband. And so she's in social media now, big time. She goes back to the Brezhnev era. So she's going to be carrying some weight with older Russians who haven't been on social media and have just been getting the propaganda that goes out over TV. Think Fox demographics, mostly older people in this country. So here she is in Berlin in 1976. Here she is with Yeltsin in the 1990s. Here she is with Putin and the dictator of Belarus, Lukashenko, and then the former ruler in the Ukraine in 2001. So she's been big. I don't know which of her 5 husbands this wedding was for. But as recently as 2014, Putin gave her a big award. So she's big. The Wall Street Journal confirmed that she's got 3.4 million followers, and Kremlin spokesmen were asked about to take a position, and they declined to comment. Only one lawmaker lamely said that she had lost touch with reality. So I'm following that story. I think it's fascinating. She's not the only singer, not the only musician. There's a whole bunch of them here. I just picked out a sample of one of them that are currently speaking out against the war. Okay, I want to go back into my comfort zone, which is 10 years ago, 2012. And what was Russian civil society, these kind of people that we're just seeing speaking out now, where were they 12 years ago? There was a protest against Putin. It was called the Snow Revolution. And when we did the history of the Ukraine, we saw that they had taken inspiration from the Orange Revolution that had happened in Ukraine in 2004. And so they were trying to bring it home to Russia. And there were big rallies, particularly in Moscow and St. Petersburg. Russia has the same kind of split that we do between urban and rural. And they were quite explicit. Russia without Putin, and their grievances: authoritarianism, rigged elections, lack of civil liberties, corruption, political repression. No surprises there. And Putin's was a response. He mobilized all the securocrats, all the bureaucrats that worked in the Russian bureaucracy. And the church actually had been recruiting Putin since Putin came into power. Just as much as Putin has later recruited the church. The Orthodox Church is a very reactionary force in Russian life. And then a couple of familiar names: Navalny. He was very much a part of this. He'd been at it for 3 years already.
Yes.
And his criticism was there's so much corruption that Putin is required to mobilize religion on his side. You need the strength of the church to cover things up. You need a lot of ideology. And Putin specifically smuggled in a video into Putin's palace in Sochi and posted that on YouTube. It's one of the very creative things that he's done in opposition. And Navalny still is an inspiration. Now, Putin also, after mobilizing his domestic supporters, went abroad and wrote in the New York Times that Clinton incited the unrest, setting the tone. A well-known scenario, kind of conspiracy theory, and that Russians don't want to be like Kyrgyzstan or the Ukraine, God forbid, in 2004. We want stability. So Clinton, when she became Secretary of State, one of her pillars of foreign policy was to reset with Russia. And that was the end of reset, of the election of 2012. So there was a brutal suppression afterwards, and Navalny and a guy named Boris Nemtsov were arrested. And one analysis says the working class protesters retreated in this atmosphere of intimidation. So this is all part of a police state that Putin has constructed, building on his KGB, creating and his step up, very meteoric rise in the 90s. He went from KGB to FSB to president, and from serving as an assistant to the deputy mayor of St. Petersburg. He did all that in 9 years. And what has resulted from that is a police state that's really based on the old KGB model. So Nemtsov, his story is a little more tragic. He was a more conventional politician than Navalny was. He was involved with a party in the elections of 2000 that Putin won, had an amicable relationship with Putin at that point. He was a big enough player to turn up at Davos. He was a big enough player to be included in a briefing with Obama. And he was very much after the failure of protest in 2012 to participate in a second wave protest in 2014. And of course, this is the year that Putin invaded Crimea, and the year of the second Orange Revolution, the Maidan revolt. And Hillary Clinton deputy, Victoria, she's the one that bought cookies down to the protesters that got such a big press. This was all in 2014. So Putin's pretty much upset about what's going on in the Ukraine, and he's in Ukraine, not the Ukraine, and is not going to tolerate. So he quashed the protest in 2014 like a bug, and the next year Nemtsov is assassinated, as you can see, on a bridge right below the Kremlin. And there's an outpouring of grief. This guy was had been inactive in civil life for decades. And that was the aim of Nemtsov. And it's not like Putin didn't have any rural support. This is kind of his rural support. And some of his rural support is anti-Semitic. Nemtsov was Jewish, as was one of Putin's major economic advisors, a guy named Chubais. And his policies did make rural life a little bit tougher. So there was that. And we all have been following Navalny. He's still alive. Putin killed Nemtsov or had him assassinated, but he's not doing that with Navalny. He tried, but he's not going to assassinate him on a bridge outside the Kremlin. That's a bad look. And so Navalny is in solitary confinement in a camp in Siberia, and every time you hear they're ratcheting up more and more pressure on him. And as Aiko pointed out, they did try to kill him by poisoning him with it was on an air flight that he developed his symptoms, landed at a small hospital, and after his wife, who is just an amazing advocate, she got him transferred to Germany, where he recuperated. There's a very interesting documentary, was it CNN? On Navalny. Well done, with a lot of footage that I think Navalny supplied, like home movies about what they did and how they worked the system effectively. So he came back from Germany voluntarily. God bless him. So today, Putin is unhappy with a number of people. We've talked about Shoigu before. This is a very interesting guy who was appointed, number one, because he's minority. He's Tuvan, think Mongolian throat singers. But his mother is Ukrainian. And so we've talked about him before, and we've kind of had our eye on him. How far would he go in Ukraine if his mother's Ukrainian? But right now, even though Putin has had a close relationship with him, they've gone on hunting trips together. We've seen pictures of that. He's going to have to blame somebody, and Shoigu is the defense minister, and Putin put him there, I think, partially out of affirmative action, because Putin does want a multi-cultural rebuilding of an empire like Russia had. He's not a racist. He was appointed over the protests of the KGB, FSB securocrats who wanted a hawk, but this guy's not a hawk, but he's going to take, I'm afraid he's going to take the fall, and how bad the fall will be, we'll see. 6 generals have already been sacked. Now, there's some other strange stuff going on here in Russia. This was said to be Putin's key man on developing the Arctic, and he fell overboard and died, which is just the latest in a string of mystery deaths among prominent Russian business people.
Right, there's that one guy found in the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Floor of the hospital.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're falling
There's
out.
been at least 12 that have fallen out of hospital windows.
Yeah,
Jumped.
so that you anticipate my next slide. So there's so many that Wikipedia has set up a table, a list, a wiki list, if you will, and you can look it up and read what you can't read because there's so many and the print's so small. So a lot of mystery deaths this year. And add to that, USA Today did a previous investigation. 38 Russian businessmen and oligarchs close to the Kremlin had died mysteriously. So add that up, the count is rising as we speak. All right. So back to a little bit to Timothy Snyder and Ukrainian success, and moving away from internal domestic Russian politics and shenanigans. I'm going to spend a moment just talking about Timothy Snyder's notion of luck and chance in history. Absolutely defying all the deterministic theories of history. He doesn't buy it, and especially looking at the history of Eastern Europe. So Zelensky is one of his examples of luck, of chance, that the right man happens to be at the right place. And so when we asked him if we could help him escape, he said, "I don't need a ride, I need ammunition." So where does he come from, and how improbable is his leadership at this moment? He got name recognition on a TV series called The Servant of the People. It's available on Netflix. It's Aiko and I watched the first one and we were entertained by it. And the first one sets up the premise. He plays a frustrated high school history teacher. And when his students don't know enough about government and how it works, he goes off on a rant that this ignorance is what enables corruption. And he lists off all the corrupt things in Kiev and Ukraine. And the rant is secretly recorded by one of his students and posted on social media. And overnight, he becomes like a folk hero, and unexpectedly, against all odds, is elected president of Ukraine. So here we have an example of life imitating art. And that's how this guy is in the position to be the hero that I think he is. So Snyder asks us not only to consider what if he hadn't been there and Kiev had, what if Kiev had fallen, but what if Hitler had not invaded Russia? That was stupid. He had everything lined up in his favor. What if FDR had not had the common touch that neutralized the isolationism of the 30s in this country? What if Churchill had not been there? What if Churchill almost died in an automobile accident in New York City when he stepped off the curb and instead of looking left, looked right, as we all we do the reverse dangerous thing when we visit London, and he had brain injury. He needed brain surgery. What if he had died? And what if Kiev had fallen? What would that have done to the current fascist mindset of people who were saying positive things about Putin? You don't hear much about that anymore, but there they were. And what kind of boost would they have gotten if Putin had prevailed? And what about this early victory? How important is an early victory to try to enlist support from outside? Well, we only have to go back to the Battle of Saratoga in the Revolutionary War. Iko and I visited there a couple of years ago, and the battlefield is pretty amazing. The hero of that battle, Benedict Arnold, and the Battle of Saratoga demonstrated to the French that we were serious, that we were competent, and we were capable, and they committed to allying with us against their ancient foes, the British. So this early success is redoubling the support from the EU and the support from America at a very crucial time. And Snyder puts a fine point on it. He says, Ukraine has given us a second chance, a chance to become more resolved in the work that we need to do to keep democracy going. And he takes to task what he sees as lazy passive analysis, like theories like the end of history, the clash of civilization, history repeats itself, determinism. He says, no, there's luck, there's chance, and human agency is really important. So not only does Snyder have the prescience, because he predicted this problem that Putin's going to have back in May, he also has a well-developed theory of history, and he is teaching a course at Yale on the history of Ukraine. It just started September 3rd, and it's on YouTube, and you get some of his theory of history there. The only disadvantage is there's a lot of give and take with the class, and you don't hear the student answers. So that's a little that's a fault. I don't know if they'll add subtitles, but he's gotten enough notoriety now that or fame that his class is being televised. All right, and then the need for agency in defending government. We remember this quote from Franklin when he was asked, "What kind of government will have a republic if you can keep it?" So what I do want to emphasize, and I'm more comfortable talking about trends that last for longer than 10 years. This, the age of the strongman has been going on for about 20 years, really starting with Putin. We don't know that we're in it because you never know until after the fact, but the argument is being made by this guy Rockman. He's written a book on the age of the strongman, and this is the current challenge.
You're okay.
I'm hearing somebody.
You touch.
Is that a question or, okay, onward. And it makes the point that fascism has only grown out of failed democracies. It doesn't spring de novo. So here's some more interesting developments. We've dealt with all the setbacks that Putin is dealing with at home, but on the world stage, there was a meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And this is so far kind of just a toothless talk shop that meets periodically. They just met in Samarkand in Uzbekistan. And Putin had to face these guys in person. This is the first time Xi has left China. And boy, he's got a lot of problems in China before he is voted in again. His zero policy of COVID is a disaster. A reliance on his own homegrown immunization is probably not the best. He's refusing to use state-of-the-art messenger RMA. He also is facing a housing crisis. There are over 300 mortgage strikes. So people banding together saying we've been deceived, we're not paying our mortgages anymore. So there's a civil unrest in China ongoing now. And so an international foreign policy problem is the last thing she wants at the moment. So she let Putin know, and Putin acknowledged publicly China's questions and concerns. Very different than at the Winter Olympics. And then you have Modi. Before this success in the Ukraine, Modi was kind of neutral. He abstained at the UN vote that criticized Putin's invasion. So India abstained, and they've been buying his oil, and they've been working together in this ideal of a new Asian economic arrangement, as expressed in the Shanghai Cooperation Agreement. So they're similar in that both are leveraging religion within their society. And you could argue that Modi's primary motivation was always from the standpoint of religious fundamentalism. If you look at his biography, quite early as a young boy, he was very involved in very reactionary, anti-Muslim religious movements. But here's the thing. All of a sudden, there's an opportunity for India to pick up the slack, economic slack, in the production of computer chips that is eluding China. So China, for political reasons, is being shut out of electronics development. So their biggest industrialist, a family named Tata, is pivoting to the home market and building in Tamil Nadu a huge factory that's going to make iPhones on behalf of Apple. So they're not going to Shenzhen, or no, what's the name of that? The Shenzhen industrial city, where Foxconn has been producing all of the iPhones. They're going to India. So all of a sudden, India has an interest in staying on the good side of the West. So there's that. And so in a stunning public rebuke, and this is more than what she did, Modi challenged him, and Putin acknowledged, I've heard what Modi said. I'm going to try to stop the conflict as soon as possible. And the wording of the letter that Modi sent was made public, and it said to the effect, hey, I've been telling you all along that you needed to watch out, and you're not watching out, and what's going on? And so Putin had to respond to this public challenge with his own public statement. And Modi's getting a lot of praise for expressing his concern. And here's what he said. I'll just give you all a chance to read on your own Modi's words. So there you go. He's serious. And then there's Erdogan. He's been backsliding. Ataturk promised a secularization of society, but Erdogan is a fundamentalist himself, and he has defied the checks and balances, basically is edging towards autocracy. And the problem with autocrats is nobody can tell them no when they've got bad ideas. His fixed idea is that the last thing you want to do when you have inflation is raise interest rates. So his response to inflation has been to lower interest rates, and inflation is 80%. So there's a crisis, and he's up for re-election. But last night, Judy Woodruff on PBS interviewed him, and she asked pointedly. He said that all territory that Russia's invaded has to be returned. Well, is that since February, or is that since 2014? And he said, yes, give Crimea back. There are Tatars there. Tatars? Huh. So this triggered an interesting synergy. We had a museum guide who was a Tatar. And we know that in Tatarstan in Russia, that where most of the Tatars live, the capital is Kazan. And we met on our trip to Russia a tourist. We met him in Lithuania, a Russian tourist who was from Kazan, a Tatar. We kept running into Tatars and Kazan all over the place. There's Our Lady of Kazan that is in two major cathedrals, in Moscow and St. Petersburg. And this Lady of Black Madonna, there are quite a few Black Madonnas around the world, some in Spain, as I recall. It was an icon that goes back to Constantinople, that's had a mysterious history, been lost and found. But here's the thing. Russian military commanders have repeatedly credited the Lady of Kazan with repelling 3 major invasions. And it's a phenomenon in Russia, because there's been all kinds of copies made of it, and miracles continuously attributed to it. So that was a rabbit hole that opened up for me when Erdogan made his statement about Tatars. All right, so I think this is we're getting close to a good place to stop, and have a discussion. I will return next week to the support for democratic ideals around the world, and then we'll really get to Snyder's history specifically of Ukraine. So I'm going to stop share, and we'll turn our lights on, and you'll see our vast audience in attendance, and we'll open it up to discussions. Set it so you can, yeah. All right, the floor is open. I have stopped talking.
John, can I just add something? It's David.
Yeah,
Can I add something to your discussion? That just an anecdote, really. Our Lady of Kazan was housed at Our Lady of Fatima in San Francisco for part of the Cold War.
Oh, really?
really?
That was the church that I grew up going to, and my son was baptized there. Yeah, it was kind of smuggled out during the Soviet Revolution with help from some Jesuits, and then given to the Our Lady of Fatima was Russian/Ukrainian Catholic Church. It's primarily Russian, but at the time, most of the Ukrainian Catholics would go there, and still do. But I mean, I guess it's technically in Old Slavonic originally, but I think now Mass is in Russian. But they were there, it was housed there, and then it was given to the Pope. And then I think it was John Paul who gave it back to the Metropolitan, to the Patriarch of Moscow, as a reconciliation piece.
Well, okay, David, that's great. And that's why I go down rabbit holes. Yeah, because they lead to other interesting places. Thank you for
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
that.
just a little side bit, just to bring it back to California history.
Yeah, there you go.
Is that the Russian Orthodox Church on like Geary and 27th, or which church?
So it's actually the Eastern Rite Catholic Church. So the Russian they had some connections with the Russian Orthodox Church back a long time ago. They're now on Geary at they're in the chapel to Our Lady of the Sea, or whatever it's called, the Roman Catholic Church there on Geary, the big one. Our Lady of Fatima was actually in a converted kind of Victorian mansion on Lake Street. So just like 2 blocks down from the Russian Orthodox Cathedral there. So, yeah.
And the name of your church again?
Well, that was Our Lady of Fatima. That we went there, we'd go there sometimes. My son was baptized there because the chaplaincy that we belonged to, which was part of UC Berkeley, had kind of closed and been consolidated into Our Lady of Fatima.
Okay.
So
that's Eastern Rite as opposed to Orthodox.
Yeah, it's Eastern Rite Catholic. So they're basically like Orthodox, but in communion with Rome. Although some Orthodox don't like people saying they're basically Orthodox, because there's some but yeah, there's a whole set of like the Ukrainian Catholic Church, right? Like the in the beginning of the war, a lot of the public support here was at the Ukrainian Catholic Cathedral in DC or outside of DC, right? Not the Ukrainian Orthodox Ukrainian Catholic Church. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Where you don't have to apologize to Protestants for a complex splinterism.
Yeah, that's true. You can blame the Orthodox and the Catholics and everybody. Yeah, for sure. They did it about 1,000 years. Well, no, that's not true. Well, actually, yeah, starting about 1,000 years before, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Ramsey has an interesting graphic. Maybe I'll show it at the beginning next time. That just shows the Great Schism of 10,050 and what happens after that, which is just this splaying of religious movements.
Oh, yeah, and of course.
Well, John, wonderful talk. Thank you very much. I was going to ask about relationships between Putin and China, India, and Turkey, and there you went at the end of the talk. So my comments are on trivial points. You got all the main themes I was interested in. One trivial point is that there is a Black Madonna in the south of France. We've seen it. It's, the part of France that is sort of Mediterranean and Spanish in its influences and Italian. And the second one had to do with your comments on the difficulties countries are facing with inflation, particularly Erdogan and Turkey, where it's, as you said, 84%. So this is now off theme, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm very distressed with the supine passivity of the Democratic Party when Republicans talk about economics as their favorite theme to regain seats in the House and Senate in the midterms, pointing to inflation, blaming the incumbent administration for inflation, when we're right in the middle of the inflation worldwide. In France, actually, it's pretty good. It's about 6%. But in the UK, it's 14%. In Spain, it's 17%. In Germany, it's 12%. You'd have to blame Biden for inflation all over the world to blame it for the current inflation we're facing, which is, sort of mid-level among developed economies. And it's a function of recovery from COVID, and it's a function of the war and what it's done to the price of energy, of petrochemical energy sources. So it just upsets me that no one seems to point this out when Republicans talk about inflation as the hammer with which to beat the Democrats into submission in the midterms. That's very much an aside. It's politicizing your wonderful talk.
Read of the petrochemical companies themselves. A lot of the profits are staggering, and
Oh yeah, they're breathtaking.
billion, doubling their profits from the year before. It's not just supply and demand. It's greed, is my understanding, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, the EU is taxing that windfall. So they're smart. By the way, Republicans are not able to leverage this issue as much as possible because now they inadvertently abortion has kind of displaced it as the hot topic, and Republicans are furious with Lindsey Graham for taking up all their oxygen with this outlawing it after 15 weeks motion. So anyway, we shall see. It'll be an interesting election, and as Timothy Snyder says, I think a lot hinges on luck and chance and people shooting themselves in the foot and not doing the right thing as much as arguing rationally.
I heard on the news that there was this kid who had a drone in Ukraine, and he helped use his drone by pinpointing where the coordinates. He gave the military the coordinates for the Russians, and they bombed 100 tanks with that information. A kid. So everybody is in there because it's their country.
Where did you hear this, April?
I can't remember if it was just the news or if I had read it, but
Today? Recently?
yeah, I think it was a little bit older, because the thing is, I think it was either Rachel Maddow or what's our favorite guy that works at the New York
No,
Times?
good one?
No, Klein or you know.
Ezra Klein?
Ezra
Not
Klein.
Ezra Klein.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was an interesting.
Did she ever get the news?
Okay.
And then also the other thing that I saw, and this was on TV, which was really interesting. They were talking to young children in Ukraine, and this kid said, well, you better start helping us, because this wasn't that young kid, it was a high school kid. And she said, if we don't stop them, you're going to have to stop them.
Yeah.
Well put, well put.
Another valuable resource, I think, is the daily BBC podcast, Ukraine podcast. They have a lot of topical stuff mixed in with just the latest in battlefield developments, but it's mostly about domestic, and that's where I heard about the diva Allah from an interview with them, and that set me off on the track to run her down, which is what an interesting story hers was. All right, so we're on an hour. I like to keep it at an hour just so that people that'll watch by tape will keep watching. And I really appreciate it. This is I think probably the best discussion we've had. So this is the direction I want us to go. So it's been great. I'm going to stop recording, and then we'll chat a little bit informally. I want to hear about Carol.